Hello, here we are again for another episode of the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. And on this show, we're talking about everything to do with freedom and how you can invest in property in a way that makes sure you create that financial freedom for yourself. And we're doing everything on this show, everything from the big picture strategy right down to the detailed practical solutions. And today's a great example of really the intersection of both of those two elements. So we're talking about KPIs and how to get the right ones in place so that they can drive the right actions for you to get the results that you're ultimately looking for, which for most of us is to do more deals and create more cash flow. So that's really the topic of conversation today between Dom and Dave. And you know, this is like another thing on our list that we have to do, KPIs, and they can feel like a real drag if you don't get them right. And also if you get too perfectionist about how you set them up along the way. So a lot of wisdom to come in this podcast ahead from my wonderful husband and the gorgeous Dominic Beechnow. Let's do this.
Hello to the audience and hello, Dave.
Hello, Dom.
Right, today's topic is what I would consider potentially quite boring, but actually I know it isn't. And you are the king of it. It is the topic of key performance indicators or business growth indicators. In short, the numbers, the important numbers that one has to track and set as well in order to get make sure the business is moving in the right direction. So Dave, this is quite a big topic, but I know it's absolutely essential for success in business. So what are we going to cover today that's going to be of use to the listeners?
Okay, so I mean, I think these obviously aren't boring at all. This is literally like the magic, is the true magic of it happening, but then I am a kind of mechanic style. It's a bit like a man who goes under the hood of the car to know how it's running. That's what KPIs are doing for you. It's actually being able to see how the car is operating just in the numbers level. So primarily, I'm going to start from the position that we operate for ourselves and for our clients. So it's the once a month. What are you doing once a month and why are you doing it to track KPIs? And in particular, the power that has within the business. So we're going to be talking about exactly what we analyze, like what types of things we add as KPIs and the types of uses of them. Because I think in terms of your general tracking of your business, and some of them are going to be business growth indicators, but some of them will be performance indicators. And some of it as well is about the targeting and how you're trying to manifest the business and pushing yourself and keep yourself accountable. So there's so many different applications of the KPIs. So I want to start there. And then later on, I think we should talk a bit about team. As you start to onboard team members, how to use KPIs to kind of track what they're doing and actually give them an idea of what's performance in their role. So yeah, there's going to be an aspect on that as well. But really, for most people listening, if you can just start the basic level of KPI, it can supercharge your business just from a basic set of KPIs. So we'll start there.
Okay, good. Well, you know what? It makes me think the reason why a lot of people shy away from this is because actually it's the numbers, right? And numbers don't lie. It's binary. They're there or they're not there. You've hit the target or you've missed the target. It shows that although you might have been taking action, you might be really, really busy. Fact is, if you haven't moved the needle, which is, and a KPI is a measure of that needle being moved in terms of the direction of your business, then actually, well, you haven't really achieved the important stuff. So KPIs are the important stuff. In fact, they often set the direction of the business. So for those investors who are listening right now, who are on their own, perhaps, maybe they've got a VA or something, and it's just them, yes, you guys too should absolutely have key performance indicators for yourselves. And why should that be then, Dave?
Well, just you call me out there, Tom. I was waiting for you to answer it. Why should that be?
Why should yeah, go on.
So yeah, but because if you don't set key performance indicators for yourself, then you're not actually assessing what your effort and time is rewarding you. If you aren't checking how well your effort and time is actually doing in any way, you are in every case, you're going to be being inefficient. You're going to be wasting time. You're going to be throwing away effort. And that's life force going down the drain. that may not be getting you the results that the reason you're doing those things, the reason you're going to those networking events, or you're taking those actions and you're making that time and effort, is to try and get a result. And if you're not tracking your KPIs around it, you might just be not getting the results and not really noticing it and not noticing why. And literally, it's just a waste of life. Literally,
Yes, exactly.
throwing away
I
life.
love that. Yeah, your life force going down the drain if you're not tracking and getting the results that you want. And so, but some people go, well, yeah, but when networking, it's really difficult to track that. So I guess one of the questions would be, well, what are the most important key performance indicators for property investors to consider tracking at the very least? And I know a lot of them go, well, I want to check how much money I'm making, or how much profit I'm making. But often, and maybe even number of viewings, and number of offers made, and maybe offers accepted. Those are kind of some of the more obvious ones, or at least I consider those a bit more obvious. But are there other really important ones that you see that people tend to miss, for example?
There's a lot. There's a lot. Don't worry, we'll get there. So particularly in a property business, you've got your deals and you've got your investors. These are the two aspects of your business. And so the job is to track what you're doing in each area and how the end result is of each. Now, a lot of people start on a very simple KPI. They'll just be a business growth indicator, for example, that is kind of helpful in an egotistical kind of way. It's like, how many deals have I done?
Yes.
How many properties do I have? That's a business growth indicator. I started the year with 1 property and I ended the year with 5. Great. That's a great indicator of how much I've grown, but it doesn't really tell you much as you're going along the way. So, but it is a good result indicator. Now, I guess before I jump into good examples of KPIs, I think I have to first talk about lead measures and lag measures. This is the most important thing, because if you're not clear on this, then you're missing what types of KPIs you would want. So the first thing is a lead measure. A lead measure is the job of a lead measure is to look at what you're inputting, what effort's going in, and what action you're taking to try and get your results. So an example of a lead measure would be, how many networking events are you going to in a month? Or how many messages have you sent out, or social media posts have you done? These are measures of something you are doing in order to try and get a result.
Target. Is that right? A target that you're going for?
They can often be yes, it's like an activity target. Yeah.
Because it's a lead measure, target. So it's an intention as opposed to how many have I been to. That would be lag measured. Is that right? So it's kind of the past.
And so no, not quite. Good try though. The lag measure, the lead measure is the activity you're doing, and the lag measure is the result from it.
Okay. So like theory, and outputs.
Input and output. I've gone to this many networking events, and what did I get from that networking event? So the result of your networking event is going to be different per person while you're trying to go there. But a really simple one is, I went to 5 networking events this month. How many prospective investors did I meet at those events? So I went to 5 networking events. I met 5 prospective investors. That's my lag measure, or my result measure from the event. But it goes much further than that, because that data alone isn't, in isolation, isn't that helpful. So it's telling you, great, I did find some prospects at my event, but most of the time it doesn't go as smoothly as that. Most of the time you're going to events, well, what's happening? I'm not really finding any investors, or I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm going to all my networking events, but I don't seem to be finding anyone. So your metric goes lead measure 5 networking events, lag measure 0 results, right? As soon as you've got scenarios like this, you need more measures. You need more going on in your KPIs, because the next job of the KPI is to track the entire all aspects of your funnels, and kind of all parts of the picture. So let's start with the part of the picture. So networking event becomes the beginning of a funnel. It's your job number 1 is, I've got to do something in order to find people, in order to put them, to get them attracted to me, in order to get them into conversation. So we have a simple marketing funnel, which is, I'm going to go to networking events and I'm going to try and speak to investors, prospects, and I'm going to try and speak to a number of people to identify who of those people would be right for my deals, or actually prospective investors, because a lot of the people I speak to aren't prospective investors. And of the people I speak to, I've got to try and convince them to come into a meeting with me. So you can now see we've got 4 stages to this process.
Right.
We've got go to the event, we've got to try and talk to lots of people, and we've got to then find the right people and make sure they are at that event. And that could be those right people might be there and you might not be sniffing them out, or they might not be there at all. So then you've got to find the right people, and then you've got to talk to them, and you've got to try and convince them to come on a meeting with you. And it might be that they show interest, and the next stage is follow up with them, because it might be you exchange cards, and then the next step in your funnel is, oh right, well, I've got to have sent an email afterwards to say, hey, so and so, it was really nice to meet you. How, let's have that coffee that we discussed. And then off the back of that, you've got to actually get the meeting booked in, and then you're into what I would call, we're out of marketing now, we're into sales. The moment that you sit down in a meeting with someone who you think is a good prospect, we've finished our marketing funnel. Okay, so this is you can see a whole set of actions. And now the magic of KPIs is if you actually get this identifying, there are so many reasons you might not be getting results. If you're going to 5 or let's say 4, because my brain works nicely in weeks, if you're going to 4 networking events in a month, right? 4 networking events and you're getting 0 results. Question number 1 I would be asking is, well, how many people were at those networking events? Were there 5 at each, or were there 100 at each? Okay, so were there enough? Was there enough prospective investor material in your approach? So job number 1 for me is networking. As you say, I've gone to 4, and of those 4, I estimate I had about 100 people that I got potential contact with. So now I know, okay, my pool is 100. But then the next question I always ask is, well, how many of those people did you actually talk to? Because so many people turn up to networking events and they're like, well, I'm going networking, but I'm not finding anyone. It's like, yeah, but how many people are you talking to? Oh, yeah, I probably talked to about 2, maybe 3. Like in a room of 25 people, if you're only talking to 3 people, then I tell you what, you're doing shit networking. Sorry for the language, but you're not doing a good job. And now we are able to identify a part of your actions which are a waste of time, because you're spending the full 2 hours, 3 hours to be there. But because of what you're doing while you're there, you're not getting the results. And I tell you what, if you're going to a networking event with 25 people, you should be targeting trying to talk to a certain number of them. You should be saying, every time I turn up, I need to have talked to at least 15 people to make it worth my time being there. So once again, we have another lead measure. So if we talk about lead versus lag, we go to 4 networking events. Great. The lag measure would be, how many people did I manage to get in contact with? Brilliant. Right. So I've gone to 4, I've taken an action, and I've managed to open myself up to a pool of 100 people. So that's lead lag. Next job, I need to take action at the event. Lead measure. How many did I manage to talk to? Okay, I managed to talk to 50 of those 100 people across my 4 events. That's my activity. I tried to talk to them, and I've got to talk to 50. So that's my lead measure. So of those 50, the lag measure, the results measure, is how many of those were actually of possible prospective material. How many of those may have had money or showed any interest in me? So of my 50 conversations, how many were actually worthwhile for my intended target, which is to find investors? And then say if you're talking to 50 people, but you're only finding one or two people, then you're maybe talking at the wrong events. Or it's 2 options here. You're either talking at the wrong events or you're saying the wrong things, one or the other. So then the job is, in any business, the job is always tweak and refine. You've got to go out with a hypothesis. You go to networking events with a hypothesis there are investors there. So you start talking to people to see if they are there. If you're not finding them, you then have to tweak and refine. You have to say, is it because hypothesis A, there are no investors in the room? Or is it because hypothesis B, I'm not saying the right things to make them interested in me? There's 2 hypotheses. So we've got to go and try changing, tweaking what we say, refine what we say to disqualify hypothesis B before we say that's the wrong networking event. I'm going to tell you one little secret is that most people go with hypothesis A immediately. They just assume that they are amazing and they're saying all the right things, and that obviously if someone's an investor, they'd definitely be talking to them and saying, yeah, I'm interested. And they immediately assume they must have the wrong events. And I can promise you, 99% of the time, with everyone I work with, it's the other way around. They're saying the wrong things. You go to the right event, they're already going to the right events, they're just not saying the right things to get someone interested. And when you then work on your pitch, you work on how you're saying things, what you're saying, what your messaging is, how it's coming across, and suddenly they start getting results where they weren't before. But we only know to do that because we've got all the different lines of the funnel. We've each different aspect for me to say, okay, great. So you're going to the events, brilliant, action taken. Okay, that's better than a lot of people. But you're only talking to 2 people. Okay, right. Next time, go and talk to more people. Okay, you're now doing that. Okay, why is no one an investor? Okay, now tell me what you're saying to them. Suddenly we get into a whole different conversation each time as we work out if someone's actually going to the event, why are they not getting the results?
Yes.
And now
Yes.
it's literally like an engineer working on a car, trying to optimize it,
Yeah.
working out why it's not going fast enough, why is it breaking down? Without knowing all those different aspects, you can't assess.
Yes, quite. And that makes me think of an old mentor of ours, I believe, who said, marketing is now numbers. And you've talked about effectively the key performance indicators, the KPIs of marketing. So that's such an important aspect of the business to get right, to measure in the right way, so that you know what actions you're taking, whether or not they're working. Because yes,
Yeah.
there's inputs, there's your actions, but those needs to be measured so that you can see what outputs or lag measures are also coming out off the back of it. So that's marketing. What
Yeah.
other aspects are really important to measure in a property investor's
Well,
business?
it's the same. Let's just do, I've given you a really good example, Mark. You can do exactly the same with the social media marketing. How many posts are you
Yes.
doing? How many direct responses are you getting? How many people are showing interest? How many direct messages? It's exactly the same. You just got to think through everything you want. What are you doing and what are you wanting to be a result? And always, I think in all of these things, you have different funnels. So the first one I said is marketing there. I always talk about marketing as the action I'm taking to get into a room with someone or a Zoom call with someone who I know is a prospect. So
Yes.
marketing goes all the way to the point until someone says, I'm interested, let's have a chat. Now we're into sales. Now we're into a different funnel. Because the moment you start talking to someone and saying, okay, I'm having a meeting with you to discuss my investments, that is now step number 1, lead measure number 1. It's actually the
Yes.
end lag measure of marketing. It's the first lead measure of your sales
Right.
funnel. So then sales would be obviously the next one, right? You've got to have a sales pipeline of some sort. It doesn't matter how ethically minded you are and how you want to do things supernaturally, or how you're just an amazing, silver-tongued genius when it comes to talking to people or not. It doesn't matter what it is. To be a good business and a good running it well and to be able to scale it up, you want to have a series of steps that you take every time with your
Yes.
prospective investors. And that means having a sales funnel, a sales
Yeah.
pipeline.
Yeah.
So the sales pipeline would, for example, have initial meeting, and then off the back of the initial meeting, you're going to have an agenda on that. And you're like, okay, so what happens next? The next step is I'm going to have a second meeting where I go deeper. And did I manage to get my investors onto the second meeting? And the same thing after the second meeting. What's the third meeting? Are there any emails to send in between? So you have this mapped out pipeline of actions you take. And in our one, for example, there are usually 3 to 4 meetings. I would track 3 as my standards, and the fourth is an extra. And I will have actions in between. So there'll be at
Yeah.
least 5, maybe 6 phases that I will be tracking. And those actions might even be, because it's amazing when I'm talking to clients and or team, and it's like, well, we're struggling to get investors through. And you look at the numbers, it's like, well, actually, it's nothing to do with a struggle. It's just the emails haven't been sent. It's as simple
Right.
as that. You've done
Yeah.
a meeting. You haven't sent out the next email, or you haven't booked in the next meeting yet, and you're struggling, and you're just waiting for the person to come back to you, and you haven't followed up. Like, it's as basic as that sometime, where the blockage is, but you don't know that
Yes.
unless you've got it all listed out. So sales pipeline is another one that
Yeah.
everyone should have as a standard. So we've got the marketing funnel goes into the sales pipeline. Sales pipeline will follow the same three meetings and a few actions in between, whether it's emails, follow-ups, whatever, up until the point of an investor saying, great, here's I've signed the contract. That's the final result measure of that, and the very final one at the end is signed contract, and then money in the bank, actual money arriving. So that's the final lag measure, result measure of the pipeline. And then the other one that's most important is the deals, the deal pipeline. So again, same thing. It follows all the same rules. It's just you're going to have, what are you doing at the very beginning of your deal sourcing? And in this case, most key people's cases, it might be searching Rightmove. It might be going and trying to look on Rightmove for a deal that hits your certain criteria. So you'd have an initial measure, which is how many deals did you find on Rightmove? How many deals did you find this month on Rightmove that hit your criteria? And then the second measure would be how many of them did you go and view, or how many did you analyze? Like, literally, you just got to have a list of what the actions are to do a sort of deal. And I think our one is something like Rightmove, go on Rightmove. So the first measure would be how many deals did I find that hit my criteria. Second one for us is deal analysis. So if we find them, we actually do the analysis first. So how many deals have we analyzed of those? And then after that, it would be for us, actually, in most cases, offer made already before we view. But for most people, it would be viewing next. So how many deals have you then managed to view of the ones that I would put, even this has been a learning of mine, you could do after deal analysis, it's good to have a measure there of how many were actually stacked up or how many actually came out the other side as one you would offer on. If there was a problem. So you do the Rightmove search, the analysis, and then you're like, how many number of properties that are offerable, basically. And then after that, it's viewing. So how many did I actually go and view? Now, when you get this all listed out, it becomes super obvious why someone's maybe every month scrolling Rightmove, doing loads of analysis, but somehow never getting any deals secured. Because you go, all right, well, okay, so you're looking on Rightmove. I can see that you found 20 deals last month, brilliant, and yeah, I can see you analysed 10 of them. Well done, good work. Why did you not view any? Why does viewing say 0? And the person's like, oh, because ABC happened. Oh, I couldn't get round there. Okay, well, that's great, but here's the point at which the rubber hits the road, that you've done a load of work, but you're never going to get any deals secured because you haven't viewed them, and now you're coming up with all these great reasons why. And I would call those procrastination points. I don't like to call them excuses, but they are procrastination points. And now we get to dive into the real nuts and bolts, what's going on in the business, because there comes a blockage. There's a problem. So that's, I'd say, the deal pipeline or sourcing pipeline is another essential that you want to have. So these are the three for a really good growing business. Deals,
so
marketing for investors.
In summary, then, what I'm hearing is that KPIs set the direction, the goal of what it is you want to achieve. They give you feedback, effectively, when the numbers aren't hit, as to what's working and what isn't working. And therefore, you can then tweak and change your actions as a result of having clear KPIs, things that you are tracking, and therefore the things that you're working towards. But can you do this on your own, or do you need someone else to hold you accountable? Because I think, there's that saying, what measure gets done, what gets measured gets done, but also if it's reported on, it grows exponentially. And I think this is the thing. Most people will not report to themselves. They'll not have a sit-down meeting with themselves and go, hey, look at my key metrics this month that I haven't done my networking, or I haven't put in the offers, or I haven't done this. And as a result, actually, on their own, they're struggling. So is there a correlation between KPIs and maybe, I don't know, our business of mentoring as
well? You're so right, Tom. I think it'd be a very rare soul who is running a business on their own, has no mentor, has no community aspect, and is sitting down once a month with themselves doing their KPIs. That would be a rare person, or someone who's very experienced in business and has done it in their past and has already built the habit. Yeah.
Because Arnold Schwarzenegger, the way he used to go to the gym was, but he'd chalk up on the board how many reps he'd done in each, and he would track himself, and he wouldn't stop until he'd done all of them. And then as a result, he's really pushed himself and won Mr. Olympia 4 times, etc., etc. So certain people will do it, but it is a rarity. So, and I know I don't do it for myself, but I love having Rose and Joe and you guys, and we hold each other to account, and we do it within our team as well as for our mentees. So tell us more about, and some stories to illustrate of how it's changed people's lives there.
Okay, so I guess the changing of lives is two things. I think in terms of the tracking I've just described, we have this every month with our mentees. We do it as a KPI call, and it's very quick, and they have to get it filled out once a month. And then we sit on the call, and it is our overview of their business once a month. It's an essential part of being able to mentor well and look after people and look after their businesses, because unless we know what's wrong, we can't fix it. So this is the identification of what's wrong in their business. So that on its own, having a community. Now, when Jackie and I were growing the business, we started our own KPIs between us, just the two of us. And I think having a business partner is the first step, definitely, to being able to do this once a month. So we definitely did it having the two of us, and we did manage that. We didn't have to report to our mentor. We just did it for ourselves. But then actually we did also join a program at one point as we were growing, where it was exactly the same. It's a business mentorship program where we turn up once a month and you have to report on your KPIs and you have to talk about it all. And that structure is pretty standard in business accelerator programs around the world. That's just the
Yes.
job. You turn up once a month, you report on what you've done, and you get plugged into a community of other people who can give you help, guidance, advice, can see where you've been, what they've been done has been different to what you do, and you get to see other people as well. You can see what they're struggling with, and it's all part of that learning mentality. So having that community, I think, is really powerful, and it
Yes.
means the result is it means you actually you get driven, you get noted when things aren't going to plan, when you're not taking action. So job number one is it becomes an accountability feature. That if you haven't done this stuff and you're sitting in front of 3 or 4 other people, and it's like someone says, "Oh, so why didn't you go to networking events?" and you have to
Yeah.
explain yourself. It's just
Yeah.
embarrassing, right? And
It
if
is.
it's fine to do it 1 month, and then you do it a second month, you're like, this feels bad, and then you do it a third month. You don't do it a third month. You actually get on with it because it's too
Yes.
embarrassing to go to the same call the third time in a row where everyone else is, doing their actions, and you're there going, "Oh yeah, I didn't get to the networking events again this month
Yeah.
because," and come up with a load more excuses. It really is so powerful as that. What's that word for it? Community. When you have
Yeah. Cohesiveness and accountability to ensure that things,
yeah,
work out
a
and go well.
community accountability. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very powerful tool. Similarly, it's that, and this is why you can spot the people who are kind of wannabes versus the ones who are really focused and clear about what it is they want. People who are focused and clear about what they want will measure how close they're getting. And they'll use
Yeah.
time as a tool, like we do in our mentoring sessions and KPI sessions. Actually, you've got 3 minutes to report on this. You need to have done the prep because, by the way, we're just looking down the numbers of what you've hit and not hit, and we're going to question you on the ones that you haven't hit. Why? Um, and yeah, so there's no hiding, as I mentioned before. There is no hiding. It's black and white. You have done it or you haven't done it. You put in the effort or you haven't put in the effort. And so at what point then do you need to kind of go, well, hang on, these are the wrong measures, perhaps, because things do
Mm.
change. Is there any sort of obvious things there? Because sometimes people feel down and they'll beat themselves up because they haven't hit certain criteria or certain metrics, when in fact actually that might be measuring the wrong thing. So I guess
Well,
yeah,
I,
can you?
I agree, and I think it's a bit hard because if you've set KPIs, that means you've usually set targets and you've planned it
Yeah,
out. And one of the extra superpowers it gives you is if you're tracking it properly, you can actually start to see if I take this much of this action, I know I can get this much result. So a good example is we try to get every business to the point where they're saying, if I view 10 properties and get offers in on 10 properties, I know I will get 2 offers accepted. So they're very clear on the input, how much they need to do of one thing to be able to get to the number of offers accepted that they're aiming for in that month. So it gives you this superpower of being able to just like map out like a cookie cutter. Okay, so great. Over the next 3 months, this is what I'm planning to do because I know I want to do 3 deals over the next 3 months. I know therefore I'm going to have to get 30 offers in. In order to do 30 offers, I know I'm going to have to view 60 properties. It becomes a
yeah,
really simple mathematical equation. You just work backwards. And I think with that in mind, it gives people this capability to
mhm.
just drive forwards and see exactly what's happening moving forwards. And oh wait, Dom, you know what? I've forgotten what your original question was.
It was giving
I've forgotten what your
examples
original question was.
he says I'm I'm struggling too now. It was about examples of changing KPIs. So when it isn't working and actually maybe we need to
So that
adjust the metrics.
that's it. So it gives these people the ability to drive forward. However, it gives you always the chance to see what's going right and what's going wrong, what's working, what isn't. And
Yeah.
every quarter you reset. Every single quarter you
Okay.
reset. So you can set yourself your targets. You know what you're doing for the next 3 months. You go for it, and then you take the time to look back. And it's the same strategic resetting happens every quarter in our business for our team,
Right.
for our mentees, for us. So you look at your strategic, and you can look back and you can say, well, look, I realize I'm ABC isn't working very well, but actually I've noticed it's because I'm not really wanting it anymore. I'm not motivated by that anymore, or I've been focusing my attention elsewhere, and you get to question it. Is it
Yes.
because you're being distracted and you should actually be focusing on it, and next quarter you're going to double down, or is
Yes.
it because it's actually not right for you and your business? It could be
Mm.
you're putting lots of effort into networking and actually you're getting results in another sector, social media marketing, and
Yeah.
therefore you're kind of not turning up to networking events because really you're already getting the results you need elsewhere. And it's like, is this something I should just let go of?
Yeah.
Should I
Yes.
actually just focus in, double down on the social media stuff and not worry about the
Okay.
networking anymore because it's
Yeah.
not such a good use of time? So you get this opportunity to reassess once a quarter. And I'd say as well, people often fluctuate it based on the business needs. So, and I don't suggest this as a standard, but quite often people might just have way too many deals and not enough investors, and they do press pause on their deal pipeline for a month or two, and they're
Yes.
like, you know what, for the next 2 months I'm not going to go on any viewings. I just need to focus in on the investor actions, and i can
Yeah.
i can just get rid of those targets that I had because
Yes.
it's worked too well, and now I just got to catch up with the investor. And it happens vice versa. You're going to have too much money, too many investors lined up, and not enough deals working. So you just press pause on the investor stuff.
Yeah.
So that definitely is another reason that you might adjust it and play with it.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense, and it's good to be aware of that too, because at certain times of year you might have more success than others because of the season. You know, Christmas, there's more on networking opportunities, going to parties, but there's less deals being done because people have less property on the market at that time of year, for example. So maybe things can fluctuate and change throughout the year, which is a good one to think about. Um, Also, I guess in terms of time, so we've got measures which are goals. You know, you've got KPIs of I want to hit this quarter or this month. Then you've got actual. This is what I've done today on Wednesday when I'm looking at the numbers.
Mm,
And then I've got, well, last month I did this many. So you know, that's past. So you've got past, present, and future in
yeah,
terms of your metrics. And then yeah, they get updated or changed quarterly, you're saying, on
yeah,
the whole,
definitely
unless there's a big change.
quarterly. And
Flick.
I'd say what you just described there, the present ones. I loved your story of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the chalking up on the chalkboard for every rep. So one of
Yeah.
our biggest suggestions is we track all our KPIs on a spreadsheet.
Hmm.
But honestly, going into your computer and finding that spreadsheet, getting up and putting in,
Yes.
the numbers, it becomes a chore for a lot of people. And more importantly, if you do it at the end of the month and you're looking back, quite often you can't remember it. So the
Yeah.
reason it's a chore is because you're actually sitting there scrabbling around in your overworked brain and sitting there going, "Oh God, I can't remember what I did. Oh, this is pointless." I'm just going to put in some random number, and it just feels really pointless. And that doesn't work very well. So we definitely espouse and do have something up on the wall, just a piece of paper with the ones your actions you're taking on a regular basis, and you literally do chalk it up through the month, and it becomes a real success point. End of the week, you're like, did
Mm.
I get my 5 investor meetings done this
Yeah.
week, or did I do my 5 viewings? Check, 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 check. Yes, did my 5. I'm going to go have a celebratory pint. It's
Yes.
a real an active thing you can do to visually and physically see the effort you're putting into your business. And then at the end of the month, that's when you get to analyze and assess and look at a bigger picture of, yeah, I put all this effort in, but am I getting the results?
Right.
And how's that looking on an assessment basis?
Yes, yes, exactly. It is a real motivator, isn't it? To have the numbers on the board, they're staring at you every day, you're looking at them every day, and actually that's what you got to do. You just got to keep
Yeah.
effectively showing up and taking the right action that's going to hit those numbers. I saw an interview with Joe Wicks the other day, and they were asking about how he became, so successful. Now, obviously, right time, right place with COVID and everyone watching him on TV and doing his workouts and then exploding from there. And he's got 30 staff now, but he just said, I just kept showing up. He just kept doing the videos that he did every single day. And guess what? It just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then opportunity, gosh, suddenly found him. But so many people just failed to show up in the first place and actually do the right actions because they're not, I don't know, there isn't that either time pressure or they're not measuring it. And that's why KPIs are just so important for setting that direction and measuring the results that you're getting from the action that you're putting in. Because everyone's busy. Everyone's too busy. There's too many distractions, too many things going on. But actually, what are the most important things? If you sit down, you think about it, you look at what are the metrics that I need to start measuring to see if my actions are making a difference. KPIs is where it's at. Right. Well, we know the importance of it. We know how important it is to growing a business. We obviously track them for ourselves. We track them for our mentees. Are there any other, I mean, and you can check them for health and fitness as well,
Yeah.
it's not just business. It can be number of sleep hours. It could be habits around number of, I don't know, fasting hours that you've done or whatever it might be. So there's so many ways in which one can use key metrics, key performance indicators like this. Are there any other things that we haven't touched on where it's worth talking about?
Yeah, that's where I wanted to get to the much more, what I would say, what can be very complex part, which is
Okay.
using them to support team.
Right.
So with our team, everyone has set their own KPIs and they set their own rocks, and that's really great. It gives them targets and it gives them something to report on once a month. That's great. But it is very difficult to choose the most powerful performance indicators for whether a team
Yes.
member is actually performing in their role. And I think some of the ones in our lettings business, these are probably the ones that are clearest for me. Um,
Mhm.
you've got to have some sort of metrics around how long your voids are between tenants, because you've got to choose
Mhm.
things that are something within the team members' control enough that they can try and push the needle, change it, and their action taking is what is really going to impact it. So void periods between tenants is a huge profitability thing for the business. The longer the void, the less rent we get, and it's so obvious a team member can affect it because there are things that come up. A contractor lets them down, or we can't find tenants. There's no viewings, tenants coming through, and for that part we would have again the same breakdown. I would need to be able to see on a more micro level, how many tenants have applied for our job.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if we're not getting applications, then I know the problem is to do with the advert or potentially the price. So it's advert or price we can play with. But if we're getting applicants, then we go down to the next level. So how many of those are actually turning up to the viewing? And then it's like, oh, well, we've got 10 applicants, but only one person turned up. Okay, well, we know there's probably a problem somewhere between the job advert and in what we're doing to try and make them sticky, to try and get tenants to actually turn up to the viewing, whatever that might be, whether it's more phone calls in between, emails, reminders, making them
Yes.
feel more excited about it. There's so much you can do activity wise. So then you say, okay, so they all turned up. How many offers are we getting? How many people are
Yeah.
actually saying they're interested to rent it and they actually want to get it from us? Well, if we're not getting any offers, booking 10 people to turn up to the viewing, there's something wrong with the property. And we need to
Mm.
go in there and say, okay, is it because we need to get feedback from the tenant? We need to ask them. We need to get in contact with them and say, how was it? Is there any feedback? So all of this granularity is essential for me to be able to optimize that part of the business. But from the
Yes.
team member performance perspective, really it comes down to one number. How long is the void overall? Because I want them to be accountable. I want them to be proactively assessing and trying to work all of that granularity out themselves. I don't
Mm.
want to be having to sit down and talk that through with them every day or every week and be like, okay, well, how's it going? Oh, yeah, okay, I think you should try this. I think you should try that. I don't want that. I want them to be thinking that. And if,
Yeah.
if they're only if they're not given the right incentive or the right performance indicator, then they're not left accountable to do that. So for me, it's like your job as a team member is to reduce my voids in any way possible. So you are going to be responsible for this list of KPIs,
Yes.
and at the end of the day, your accountability is to get my average void down to 14 days between tenants.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
anything that goes over 14 days is a red flag, and I'm going to be notified immediately. So I
Right.
know as soon as they're missing that, and I can jump in and get involved. But their job, as far as they know, is they need to be looking at it, going, "Oh well, we're not getting enough viewings. Oh, time's ticking by. I'm already 7 days in, and I haven't had anyone interested. Maybe I need to change something about the listing. Maybe I need to change the price." I need them feeling that and thinking that, so that they can hit their target, which is just the overall number of days. And
Yes.
that means we've got a great performance indicator. It's very straightforward. It's one number related to a
Yeah.
very important function of the business that definitely improves our profitability. So you can see that
Mm.
the empowerment there is massive, but I also do need the ability to see the granularity so we can assess, like I said earlier, tinker, refine, tweak, evolve, make it better. And
Yeah.
that way you can once you get really simple measures like that, you're able to step back, let the team member get on with it, and then you've got one thing that happens when it goes beyond a certain point. Red flag happens, and you're able to step in.
Mm.
That way you can just step back from the whole of your business, and all you're doing is stepping in when things aren't going as you want them to, as you expect them to, and you just jump in
Yeah.
on each red flag that happens based on the KPIs not being hit. Now we've got
Nice.
empowered team members who are accountable for the big picture of their role, the big primary aim of their role, not just on one tiny aspect of it. And you're able to step back and lead them to it, but also be notified when things are going to plan, so you're not left blindsided when you suddenly find you've got £50,000 of arrears that you weren't expecting that month. So it kind of works on all levels there.
Yeah. That makes me think of when a KPI can actually encourage the wrong behaviors.
Fantastic
Because
point.
this is a really important point. I mean, so many companies, so for example, Pizza Express at one point, they had so many offers on, so many deals that they basically trained their customers to only go to the restaurant when there was a deal or an offer on. And so they weren't making nearly as much profit as they should have been based on the turnover or the footfall of people going to visit their restaurants, because they only ever visited effectively because there was an offer on, and they had to effectively stop all offers, take a big hit for a while, whilst people started to come back without having to have an offer in order to show up. That's a Pizza Express example. But in a property investor's business, are there any KPIs that are potentially dangerous to consider, or that could be detrimental if they're not looking at it in the right way? And I've got one if you haven't.
Okay, do you know what? They're definitely, and I've definitely come across them many times. I'm just trying to get one off the top of my head, but definitely around the act. If you have KPIs that are on the granular level of the activity they're taking, someone can just go all out of their way to do that action, do as much of that action as possible, but without any care for the results. So if you have a KPI that, for example, is around number of phone calls made to so it's a lead
Yes.
measure again, number of phone calls made to estate agents to check in on something. You're saying, I need you to be making at least 30 phone calls a month. Okay, and then you're just saying 30 phone calls is all you care about, that's the KPI, but without any regard for the lag, for what's the result they're trying to achieve. Then you automatically have a KPI that is could be incentivizing completely the wrong action, because they're going to put effort and time into getting onto the next phone call, but they're not going to put any effort and time into what they're saying whilst on the call. So if you've got very low level team members, maybe you've got people in the Philippines, you're just trying to get them doing all the actions specifically around this kind of usually churning data, getting through the initial basic bulk actions. If you give them activity measures without regard for results, you are definitely on the wrong path, because they inevitably 99% of the time will end up finding ways to just hit that measure without really caring about the result that is being achieved, and it will cut corners and cause detrimental. So that is a generalist one. What's your one, Dom?
And that's very common in business generally. People, the sales team have targets to hit, they hit the sales, but actually the quality of the customers is not there. So either they don't stay for very long, or they ask for their money back. And actually, the salesperson's hit their targets, that's what they had to hit. So sometimes there's a detrimental effect if you're forcing the wrong measure effectively. I mean, yes, obviously sales should be a measure, definitely, or raising finance should be a measure, but it's also doing it in the right way. So similarly, if for an example I would give in property investors' business might be, how much money they've got in the pipeline, or investor finance they've raised. That's great. You've got over 1 million, fantastic. But from how many? How many investors? Well, actually, only one investor. So they've never spoken to any other investors. They've never raised any other funding from other investors. That's a dangerous business model, because you're reliant on that effectively one customer or one investor to put in all the money into your business, and that's not a robust business, because if they leave.
I'm going to add to that, Dom, because it's absolutely right. The one client problem is massive, but also I see it a lot where people have £1 million in the pipeline, and they're like, I got £1 million, it's really good. Yeah, no, definitely, I've got all this money ready to go. I'm focusing all my efforts on sourcing, but they haven't got it committed, and they've missed out on the element. They think if someone says, yes, I'm in, I'll lend you the money, that they're in, and they're actually going to go. And if they've missed out parts of their funnel, which for me is the commitment aspect, you could literally have £1 million in your pipeline that you haven't managed to get through to full commitment, and then when it's needed to be there, it vanishes. So again, I've seen that one a lot. People have gone to they haven't gone all the way through to the correct part of the funnel, and they've stopped their measurement at I've got £1 million worth of people who've said they're in. But they've said saying they're in is different to literally committing to the types of deals you do, committing to the types of metrics you can present to them, committing. Because the worst thing most people make in this area is person says, I'm interested. Yeah, I'll invest with you. I like you. I've got 250K to go. And then when you send them the deal, there's a good old sniffy reason why they don't like it. They're like, oh, sorry, yeah, just no, that deal doesn't really work for me. And so you actually never had the money at all because it didn't suit your deal. So yeah, it's the one person, and also the making sure you've gotten them all the way through to commitment, which for me, commitment is signing of heads of terms, really, to someone sign their name to a specific deal criteria to say, I agree with this type of deal. That's what I'm interested in. So what I mean by commitment in this respect, if you've got an investor who is not committed, that means they haven't yet signed a piece of paper to say that they agree with your type of deal, they agree the types of metrics that you're going after, and that they're on board that they would invest in that type of thing. And if you haven't got someone who has literally signed to say that, there's a very good chance that they'll find some reason to duck out. Because actually you might not have aligned on everything, you might not have explained it right or whatever. It's just a good heads of terms to explain this is what I'm interested in. So those are the two aspects that I think is the one type of investor syndrome, which is a high risk, and make sure you've got them fully committed and they've signed to your types of deals, and that's the moment that they're definitely in.
Great, excellent. So we've talked about a lot of things to do with KPIs. We've got the past, present, future. We've got the marketing, sales, operations, finance team. We've got the importance of how it sets the direction, but also it means that you can adjust, you can measure, and what gets measured, grows. So what is your conclusion or final thought on the topic of KPIs?
My conclusion is that if you're taking action in your business, but you're not actually checking in on exactly how that action is rewarding you, then you are definitely wasting life. You're definitely being inefficient. You're definitely throwing away time, and you're basically slowing down your entire progress, your business growth. You're slowing down everything. And in essence, the KPIs are the only real way to fully assess that the actions you're taking are getting the results that you want. And if they're not getting the results you want, they're really the only way to assess why not and what you should change in your actions to get to those results. So if you're not tracking your KPIs, honestly, you are wasting your life and wasting your time in your business. So it's definitely something I would get on with in some form or another as soon as possible.
Awesome. I hope you finished this week's episode feeling fired up and clear about what you're going to do next to get to the next level with your KPIs to make them really useful in all of your action taking day to day. This time next week, I'm going to be joined by two very special guests, and we're going to be talking about self-sabotage and how we are actually holding ourselves back from creating true freedom in our lives. Simon and Simona are two very important people to myself and Dave, who we've worked very closely with over the recent years, and indeed many of our mentees and clients are also clients of theirs. So they've got a huge amount of wisdom to share that you're really going to love. So until next week, have a fantastic week ahead.